Welcome back to Module 4. In this section, we will take a look at costing and financing of pre-primary policies. The process of ESP costing and financing concerns determining the cost of policy options and targets and testing their financial feasibility and sustainability using a simulation model. The pre-primary subsector activities should be costed in a similar fashion as other subsectors and included in the overall ESP simulation model. As mentioned previously, the estimated costs of the ESP will be examined at regular intervals during the plan preparation as part of an iterative process. So what exactly is an education simulation model? A simulation model is developed in an Excel file to facilitate the projection of pedagogical and institutional inputs and financial resources over a certain time frame. Multiple scenarios can be projected in order to test the implications of potential policy decisions and associated trade-offs. Information on key education indicators, including expenditure and unit costs, collected as part of the ESA, will serve as the baseline for the simulation model. Simulation models can reveal what targets and policies are feasible, considering the projected available financial resources and where a funding gap may exist. This leads to adapting programs and policy targets until an optimal, feasible scenario is found and agreed upon by stakeholders. In this way, simulation models support the generation of credible, sector-wide, participatory, and costed plans. Pre-primary subsector simulation models will need to be integrated within the full plan simulation model to provide an analysis of overall sectoral cost trade-offs. Simulation models explore the consequences of the different policy options using several variables, including ECE enrollments, to estimate how many children the system will need to provide for, ECE human and physical resource requirements, to show what are the requirements in pre-primary human resources, equipment, and infrastructure in order to achieve pre-primary policy targets, ECE cost projections, the unit costs for the planned ECE programs and activities, and the available financial resources to project the educational resources that will be available in the future. The following example from Kenya will make this all clearer. The Kenya National Education Sector Plan had a policy target of increasing the ECE enrollment rate from 66% to 85% by the end of the plan period. Based on this target GER of 85%, the ECE school-aged population would increase by more than 600,000 children over the plan period. Some of these children would be enrolled in private ECE programs, but the plan also anticipated an expansion of public ECE programs from 70% to 75%. Two scenarios were then considered for targets of ECE pupil-teacher ratios: a ratio of 40 students to 1 ECE teacher, or a ratio of 30 students to 1 ECE teacher. While a lower PTR is preferred for quality reasons, it might not be feasible due to the increased enrollment. So it needed to be decided during policy formulation whether or not it was feasible to implement a lower pupil-teacher ratio in relation to the other planned targets of gross enrollment rate increasing from 66% to 85%, and the share of pupils in public settings increasing from 70 to 75%. To test out this scenario, the Kenya simulation model used the projected ECDE enrollment increases, corresponded increases in the number of needed ECDE teachers, and the resulting projected cost of ECDE teacher salaries. As this table shows, it is projected that the number of ECDE pupils would increase by 22% from 2013 to 2017. With a PTR of 40:1, teachers would need to increase by 12,050 over the planned period, and about $16.3 billion would be needed in 2017 to cater for ECDE teacher salaries. With a PTR of 30:1, ECDE teachers would need to increase by 16,066 by year 2017, and about $27.6 billion would be needed in that same year to cater for ECDE teacher salaries. Comparing the costs of each scenario, it is seen that reducing the PTR to 30:1 would cost nearly 25 billion more Kenyan shillings over the planned period than a PTR of 40:1, or 5 billion a year. Of course, the ESP is a plan for the whole sector, not just pre-primary. So the impact of subsector decisions also has to be considered in relation to the overall costs of funding the plan. A full simulation model will include all subsectors. So now we can look at the scenario in relation to the overall costs and funding of the plan. Of course, this is just a simplified scenario. In actual planning, there would be many decisions with multiple targets. Based on considerations of the overall cost and financing of the ESP, the decision to target a 40:1 ECDE pupil-teacher ratio was considered a reasonable trade-off to increase ECDE enrollment and leave additional funds available for quality improvements. You will have a chance to test out a simplified pre-primary financial simulation model yourself in this week's Champion activity. As seen, by identifying the difference between costs of the plan and potential government budget, a funding gap can be calculated. Funding gaps will have to be filled by seeking first additional government funds, by seeking other government revenues, increasing tax bases, or by improving system efficiency to lower delivery costs. If no further public funds are available, external support to the sector offers one source of funding to fill the gap. In many countries, households will be expected to contribute. This possibility needs to be carefully considered as it presents a large risk of inequitable pre-primary access, disadvantaging poorer households. SDG 4.2 also calls for at least 1 year of free compulsory education. This said, seeking a certain level of co-financing from households could be sought in contexts where access to pre-primary is means-tested, and richer households who can afford it are asked to contribute. As part of the planned development process, a review of potential funding by development partners should be undertaken. Yet, it should be stressed that increasing financing for ECE should start with adequate public financing. This is all the more true considering that ECE is a public good with many positive ripple effects. Public spending can also help to ensure that all socioeconomic groups are served. If the remaining funding gap is considered too high, strategies will have to be revised, which can include finding the most cost-effective implementation strategies or being less ambitious in the policy targets. The final financing of the plan therefore reflects the iterative exchanges between the proposed targets and strategies and the available resources until some form of consensus is agreed upon amongst all stakeholders on a reasonable financial gap level.